the American Recut, a spoiler-free review show where I, Nick,
and I, Brendan, dissect films and television to save you from atrocious media. Hello, this is Brendan.
And this is Nick. We're coming at you with a unique gimmick this time. Brendan, since this was your idea, why don't you explain what it is?
Yes, so this is something of a retrospect review of all the movies we've seen during the summer. Because we have seen some stinkers and we have seen some good ones. Okay, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We've seen a lot of stinkers. But
some of these were better than I expected, though. And I am all for this. I think the plan then is give you the movie, give our own one-sentence summaries as kind of a retrospective from seeing all the other movies in the summer, and maybe go through and rank them at the end. Maybe not.
Maybe not. And
we'll see how it works out.
Kind of take a stance and kind of observe what kind of trend movies are doing these days. And I think we all know. We talked about it in the Animation Apocalypse, one of our previous retrospects.
Yeah. That was also a future, groaning, though, at the same time.
Yeah, that was a groan.
We've escaped it.
We have.
We got through The Lion King. They don't have anything else they can throw at us yet.
Yet. Emphasis on the word yet. They will, though. They're cooking something.
All right. Speaking of, one of our least anticipated movies for the whole summer, Aladdin.
That one surprised me. Aladdin's kind of surprised me, because, when we heard that Will Smith was going to be the genie, we were all thinking the same thing. You're like, oh, he has some big shoes to fill. This is going to be a train wreck of sorts. But upon seeing the movie ourselves, you know what? Will Smith made it his own. He did a good job in making it his own. The rest of the cast members, though, were meh. They didn't whitewash it, which was good for Disney. But all the same, the cast members were pretty meh, and a few songs were pretty generic. They did not capture the essence of the original soundtrack, and that's a damn shame. Overall, the Aladdin movie, better than what I expected, but not exactly a hit either.
For me, the Aladdin remake was as bad as I expected, but in the opposite ways I expected. What I expected going into this movie were things from the trailers. These would be costume changes, changes to the costumes to be more Indian and Bollywood than Middle Eastern, which thankfully was not really a problem. I was expecting there to be massive problems with the CGI due to how poor the Will Smith genie looked, which his genie didn't look bad, but Jafar's genie looked really bad. Oof. I expected there to be very generic coloring in the lines for the plot and no real changes, which the plot actually experienced some significant changes, and a lot of Will Smith's jokes especially were retooled around him, but a lot of the plot changes didn't work and often serve to make the movie have new plot holes or possibly have failures in general that weren't expected. So generally, this is a movie where the best parts were Will Smith's genie, the choreography and costumes, and the set design, while the worst parts were all the changes made to the original story, the new songs, which, as Brendan mentioned, Jasmine got a new song. It was not great. A lot of existing songs had changes that were much worse than the animated version. And generally, this is a movie where I think my final prognosis, even in retrospect, is it was a completely unnecessary live-action remake. It gained nothing from the transition from animation to live-action.
I agree. Next up, we saw Godzilla. Now, speaking of
Godzilla King of Monsters.
Godzilla King of Monsters. Not as good as the 2014 movie, in my opinion.
Whoa, that's a dangerous opinion.
I personally enjoyed the 2014 movie more than I did this. Mainly because and this is just my personal bias, hold a grudge against the Family B plot that was introduced in this movie. That just fucking sucked. It really did. Beyond that, it was a CGI smorgasbord, which was awesome. Some good monster brawls here and there. And that's my 2 cents on the movie.
Yeah. For Godzilla 2019, I hadn't really seen many of the other Godzilla remakes, so I didn't come in here with that knowledge. But this was kind of a real big dumb movie where you had some very cool looking monsters, some good fights, and generally the monsters got a lot more characterization than the humans. I think my original opinion was that I understood why the human plot was there because you gotta have someone to follow while the monsters are doing all the actual plot. But in retrospect, I think you could have just not had the human plot period and just follow the monsters, do something interesting with that, and not this really half-baked, terrible daughter's missing, but mom's evil, but mom's actually a good guy, and this guy, it was all terrible.
Oh my god, it sucked.
Yeah, so I think overall my recommendation for Godzilla is lower than it was before. It was a pretty garbage movie in general. It has some fun special effects, and if you can get into the monster fights, they're a lot of fun, but the flaws don't make up for it. Toy Story 4. This was the latest sequel that was like a good 10 years after the original. Pixar's been doing this a lot lately, and this is no exception in my opinion. This was a movie where I got the feeling of it being completely unnecessary, generally. Not just for the movie itself, but for a lot of the characters that were in it. The stuffed animals who were Key and Peele definitely have this completely weird sense of humor that was clearly Key and Peele style. Tim Allen's Buzz Lightyear feels tacky and very one-note, which is Tim Allen in a nutshell. Bo Peep's character, despite the fact that she's advertised so prominently and was featured so much in a lot of the advertisements, didn't really matter in the movie overall, because this is mostly just there to retire Woody Logan style. Yeah, this felt like a movie where we didn't need to bring this in. Do we really care about the legacy of Woody that much? I don't. So I felt like ultimately this is a movie that's which is fine if you're like some diehard Toy Story fan who's like, well, what about the continuing adventures of Woody? You finally got your closure, I guess, but we don't need a Toy Story 5. There's no interesting characters left.
No, I agree, but that's not going to stop them. Watch as they make Toy Story 5, the Woody perspective, or Woody on the road. No, and like Nick said, this is an abysmal sequel. You know, everyone's impression was that everything was all said and done with the Toy Story franchise when they wrapped up Toy Story 3. This just felt like an unneeded continuation where some characters were needlessly demoted and others were promoted. It was... No. I would not recommend this in theaters.
I still don't recommend it in theaters, yeah. Speaking of, though, and since this is a retrospective and we want to talk about the future as well, expect more of the same from Pixar. Their originals have been flopping over and over. Their sequels are making money. They're going to keep churning out these sequels.
I agree.
And it's a damn shame.
We've seen this with Cars, Finding Nemo, and now Toy Story. They're not going to stop.
Men in Black International. God, this was a painfully generic movie.
I'm not gonna lie. This was one of my least favorite movies of all summer.
Alright, I'm taking this one again. This was a movie where just everything about it was forgettable. Like, I honestly can't remember what the plot was, or really who was in it. All I remember is what's his name? The leader of MIB International, British man, was brainwashed because he was an alien disguise, and then they blew up the alien with a little garden gnome guy who was their generic buddy. And this whole movie was just utterly forgettable and garbage. It lived up to Sony's expectations you get from Sony.
Agreed. It was, from start to finish, it was just a friggin' abysmal. I mean, we've seen some bad movies, and these movies and those movies invoke something. They stir something within you. This movie stirred nothing. You know, it was just a waste of money and time. I would not recommend this movie at all. Period. It's just, I did not like this movie one bit.
All right. Speaking of forgettable, Spider-Man: Far From Home. Why don't you take the lead on this one?
Spider-Man: Far From Home. Okay. Much like Toy Story 4, it was a little bit like a needless continuation of what happened after the Avengers. But, you know, I mean, because, and much like Toy Story 4, some characters were one note, promoted and demoted, and what have you. The villain was interesting, but not so, I don't know, he had one scene where he was really remarkable, but beyond that, he was very abysmal.
Yeah, Spider-Man: Far From Home. This was another in a long line of kind of forgettable Marvel movies. You had Mysterio on it. It was nice to finally have the Fishbowl Man get his spotlight. There is one really good scene in Far From Home, the misdirection scene where Peter Parker is just getting flung through all these illusions nonstop on a construction site. That's a wonderful effect extravaganza. Otherwise, pretty forgettable. A lot of the side characters who had a lot more to do and had a lot more heart in previous movies ended up being demoted to just kind of a single joke or a single line every so often. It's good enough, which is what I can say for any Marvel movie, really.
Yeah.
Midsommar.
You take this one.
I love this movie still. It is, it has a real style to it. It's not afraid to do something completely different. It has its moments of being not so much scary, but spooky. The characters, I still love them all. I still find them extremely quotable. This movie is dripping with style. I still highly recommend it. I think it's still in theaters.
I recommend this movie too. This was a highly anticipated film from trailer to movie. It was thoroughly enjoyable from start to finish. Beautiful cinematography, beautiful setting, very good characters. We'll call them good, but it was just a very artsy-fartsy kind of movie where it was just awesome from start to finish. I loved it. It was not so much a horror, but it was a deep, very entertaining psychological suspense thriller, and I loved it.
There are some horror elements in it, and they really work. Like, especially the suicide of the old people.
Oh yeah, definitely. That was a spectacular start, because, this movie pushed some envelopes, which is a very refreshing change of pace from conventional horror.
But anyways, that's Midsommar. That's probably still our number one pick for the summer.
Oh, totally.
Lion King, 2019.
Oh my god. The
internet loves this one.
Yeah, don't it just? It was exactly what everyone anticipated. A terribly CGI'd remake of a old classic.
I don't think the CGI was terrible, per se. It just wasn't appropriate.
You know what? That's a better way to put it. No, and they couldn't really make it work. Like you said, they put some distance between the characters when they tried to talk because we all knew the lip sync would suck.
I think that my take on this movie is that while it is impressive for a CGI perspective, because a lot of it is very impressive, like the environments are all custom built with CGI from the ground up. The animals were all built from that one. It's a real technical masterpiece. Problem is, this is a technical masterpiece where you did too well on it, and you don't have facial expressions for the animals because they're animals and they can't have facial expressions.
Agreed.
You've got problems with some voice actors were very underwhelming. Some were amazing. I still want to heap praise onto some of the voice actors, especially the ones for Shinzi, one of the hyenas, I believe. Timon and Donald Glover as Simba, both grown up. All three were wonderful in this movie and still made it almost worth sitting through.
I agree.
But I think overall my opinion of this movie isn't that it's like the worst thing ever and a travesty to society. It's just uninspired and pointless.
I agree. I didn't hate it. I was like Dick said, some tremendous voice acting by some of the cast members, but, overall just a needless recreation of an old classic. Would you see it in theaters? Oh yeah, sure. But if you want, that's your gamble.
It's solidly middle of the pack, I guess. And finally, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, our other indie film.
Yeah, by Quentin Tarantino. I enjoyed this movie. I enjoyed the chemistry between Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt. And the setting itself is pretty interesting. While you do get a sense of Quentin Tarantino's opinions bleeding into the story, it's still pretty entertaining. It's a nice slice of life perspective of two bumbling actors trying to stay relevant.
I think that my take's going to be more or less what Brennan said, but I want to make one correction to what I said during the American Recut and Ramble On of this one.
Oh yeah?
Which I claimed that this was him saying that Bruce Lee was overrated because he had his stunt double character beat the shit out of him. But I realized, after thinking about the movie for a while, that wait a minute, that was a whole daydream sequence when he was on the roof while he was fixing the antenna. He didn't actually beat up Bruce Lee. He didn't get kicked off set. He just chose to follow Leonardo's orders and just go home and fix his thing. He was daydreaming about if I did that, I would probably beat the shit out of Bruce Lee, dent up the car doing it, and then get kicked off set because his wife is a terrible person.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point.
He didn't actually do that, so that helps a lot with my enjoyment of that scene, especially because this isn't him beating up Bruce Lee. This is him thinking oh, he's such a puffed up wannabe. It's no, this is Bruce Lee.
Yeah. That's a very good point. That would explain that weird cutaway from him being on a roof to him fighting Bruce Lee.
Yeah, but anyways, though, so this movie has a lot of stuff like that. It's another fun Tarantino film. It's not my absolute favorite, but for what it is, it's slow-paced, it takes its time, and it ends up being really enjoyable.
Agreed.
I think this, along with Midsommar, were two of the shining points in the summer, which helped a lot.
Agreed. Beyond that, so on to the general retrospective. So, based on what we have seen throughout this summer, it is a smorgasbord of remakes and live-action adaptations, which are also remakes within themselves. Just a needless continuation of franchises that were once popular that are clearly cash grabs, as exhibited by Aladdin, Godzilla, Toy Story 4, Men in Black International, and SpiderMan and Lion King.
I feel like this is a movie where you can definitely point at it and say that there were a lot of films that ended up being very low quality adaptations of earlier films or just needless continuations, as you said a bit. But with the indie films that were there in this summer, which got a good amount of attention for both being highly unique and refreshing, frankly, I think that ultimately they are the ones that win this summer because while of course your Lion King, your SpiderMan, your Aladdin, they make the money because Disney has that kind of appeal for everyone.
Yeah.
Midsommar and Once Upon a Time made enough of a splash and did well enough. I think there's real hope for indie films kind of taking over summer, especially with Avengers Endgame, Avengers in general finally hitting their peak.
That's a good point. No, now we could start having a little more creativity come in now that the limelight is off the Avengers, I hope. And because Midsommar and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, they were oases of creativity in a desert of boilerplate safe plots that were reined in by Hollywood or production. Yeah.
Now, do we want to do the Watch Mojo clickbaity shit and say our top 10 picks for the summer?
Oh,
and just
top
them?
8. I think we pretty much said what we needed to say with each movie. Clearly we've said that our favorite movies this summer were Midsommar and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. While we were entertained by other movies like Aladdin and...
I was not entertained by Aladdin.
Well, okay, the worst movie for me was Men in Black International. That one is the lowest of my list there.
Thoroughly agreed.
Everything else was just pretty much uninspiring and just all around abysmal, really. Like I said, some movies invoke emotion. Hellboy, that movie in April.
God, that was so bad. It was so bad.
But it stirred some passion. These movies just stirred nothing, really, overall, and were just unneeded.
Well, that's the summer.
That's-
Look forward to fall. There's a total of 3 movies.
And we started off with, Fast and Furious.
We didn't watch that one.
We did not, and for good reason. There's enough of these fucking movies. We all know the premise.
Yeah, fall, it's looking slow. I could be pleasantly surprised, of course. I'm open to it. But it's looking slow.
Slow. Definitely slow. Hopefully by October we'll definitely get a more interesting crop of movies. But, hey, stay tuned.
Alright, and if you want more of this kind of content where we do just kind of talk about, in broad terms, trends in Hollywood, trends in theaters, and just our general retrospective opinions at the end of each kind of season, I guess, feel free to smash that like button, ring that bell,
And-
hit the thumbs up. Ugh, God, I don't want to say that.
I feel it sounded like a bit of you died as you said that.
It's true.
But no, if you guys like this kind of stuff, where we just kind of share our retrospect on just a big picture perspective of the movie industry and the trends it's going with, let us know in the comments. And yeah, smash that like button because I don't want to say we need it, but we're not going to refuse it.
We're starving.
Yeah, we're starving. Anyway.
We're starving artists dancing for your pleasure, you monkeys.
Disregard that.